You're listening to the weekly parsha podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel, 5778, 2017. This week's parsha is Parshas Lecha. And I'd like to share with you a few thoughts. I'd like to read a medrash, which is quoted by the Rabbeinu Bachai. And I'd like to give you an overview or a broad picture of the mission of Avraham Avinu, of Abraham, whose life or some events in his life are chronicled in our parsha and the parshas that follow. And I'd like to understand who he was, what was his mission, what was his essence, and how does it relate to us? We are his offspring. We are the Jewish people who carry and maintain the torch of his greatness, of his mission in the world, as we've spoken about previously. So we need to understand who he was, and thereby understand who we are meant to be. As we read the parsha, the Torah tells us, Hashem said to Avraham Avinu, Lecha, go to the land of Israel. Go. Leave all that you've accomplished here. Avraham Avinu had already been involved in Kiruv, in bringing many souls back to God, steering people away from Avodah Zarah, steering them away from idolatry. Comes to Eretz Yisrael, has certain challenges. He starts to call out in the name of God. Sarah, they go down to Egypt, they go down to Gerar. Sarah is abducted. Different challenges, different results. He becomes very wealthy. He comes back to Israel. He has to be involved with a war because his nephew Lot is also kidnapped with the people of Sodom, the war of the 4 and 5 kings. Avraham Avinu goes and he wins the war with his 318 men. Mighty warrior, a general, a conqueror, Avraham Avinu, Abraham, Ish HaChesed. Next week's parsha we're going to see all the kindness that he does with he thinks that they are people, they're actually angels. He's the Ish HaChesed, amazing personality with many, many facets to his personality. And I want to understand who is Avraham Avinu, or how are we to see Avraham Avinu? We see about Chesed, he's someone who does kindness. He's a Kiruv professional, brings people back to God. He is somebody who is a conqueror. Like, he does all of these different things. Who is he? And just to share with you a little what's going on in my life, this past week I was in London for a simcha, for a wedding. And I went with my wife, and we had the opportunity to go to visit Buckingham Palace, to see the Palace of the Queen. And we had an opportunity to go to Windsor Castle. And amazing to walk around inside, the beauty and the opulence and the wealth and the gifts that were given to the many kings throughout history and the beautiful paintings of these kings. And I came out of that experience with this thought, like, these people had power. They had power. There was the Duke of this place and the Duchess of this place and the Queen and the King. And they had this power, and this castle has been here for 800 years or so. And throughout this time, the royal families have lived in the castle. They lived, they had power, they died. Their children lived, had power, died. And it reminded me a bit of what we saw in the previous parsha with the generations who they lived, they begot children, they lived a certain amount longer, etc. I want to understand, like, significance-wise, what's so significant about these kings and queens of Britain? Right? It seemed to me to be very, like, okay, they had power, but what does it mean today? Nothing. Especially you look at the British Commonwealth today, it's gone. Right? They had all of these countries underneath their sovereign, their power, and today it's gone. Nothing left. And so we look back then and we say, what did they really have? What did they really accomplish? What was the meaning or the significance of their life? Okay, we can look at them in a painting because they were so rich. They had people who would paint them, and we know what they looked like. But I just couldn't help thinking, like, what's the meaning of it? What's the significance of it? And I want to, lahavdil, compare it to an Avraham Avinu who also lived and also conquered and also accomplished and was also fabulously wealthy. And how do we remember him? How do we understand, significantly, how do we understand the fact that the Torah tells us all about his wealth and all about his battles and all about his challenges? What is the significance of it? So I want to draw you for a moment to look at the bris bein habesarim, which is in our parsha, which is the covenant that God makes with Avraham Avinu, with Abraham. And God says to him, I'm going to have a covenant with you. You're going to receive this land, the land of Israel. Your children are going to inherit this land, 4th generation. But in the meantime, they're going to be strangers in a strange land. They're going to be downtrodden. They're going to have difficulties, etc. The verses describe the entire conversation between God and Abraham. Now, what's interesting is that when the Torah begins, when Hashem begins this conversation with Avraham Avinu, this bris bein habesarim, so the Torah tells us, he says to him, I am Hashem your God. I am Hashem your God who took you out of Ur Kasdim. Okay, this is a verse in chapter 15, verse 7. Ani Hashem asher tzisicha me Ur Kasdim. I am God who took you out of Ur Kasdim. What is Ur Kasdim? So it's the story which is well known, but it's not mentioned in the Torah. It's the story of Avraham Avinu in his youth. We don't really see too much about him until he's about 70, 75 years old. But in his youth, what happened? So I'd like to read it to you inside, because the Rabbeinu Bachai says the story very clearly, very beautifully, and actually it's brought down here in the notes that they don't. He brings the medrash, but it's not clear where the medrash is from. But the Rabbeinu Bachai says it's pretty lengthy. I'd like to go through all of it. Ani Hashem asher tzisicha me Ur Kasdim. I am Hashem your God who took you out of Ur Kasdim. Shashana Avraham Avinu. Listen to this, because this is extremely powerful. This is, to me, foundational for understanding who was Avraham Avinu, what was his mission, and what's the difference between him and all the other kings, the kings of England, the kings of France, the kings of all of the other nations that have existed throughout time, as opposed to Avraham Avinu, the Jewish people, the kingdom of the Jewish people, and who we are and who we're meant to be. When Abraham was born, there was an amazing celestial phenomenon. Everyone was looking up at the sky, and they saw that there was a star that came along on one side, and it went to the 4 different poles of the heavens, and it swallowed up the stars in each of those 4 different locations, the 4 different directions. Nimrod. So in trying to explain what was this phenomenon, what was this unbelievable thing, we talk about, some of you may have seen the eclipse, and it's an amazing thing to see. Can you imagine this kind of phenomenon? Everyone saw it. So they were explaining to him like this. Ben Nolad Terach. They were able to figure out that it meant something very significant, that Terach had a son, B'sha'azah, at this time. That a nation is going to come from this son of his. They're going to inherit this world and the next world. If you want, we will give a house full of gold and silver to his father, and we will kill him. Very interesting, okay? So they saw that this amazing spiritual force is coming into the world. It's called the Jewish people. The Jewish people are going to rule over the world. The Jewish people, ultimately, when the Messiah comes, we will have dominion over the world. We will lead the world spiritually and physically. And so they said, let's cut this off let's nip this in the bud. Before it starts to grow, let's get it now. Miyad, they sent messengers and they said to Terach, you just had a kid, we'll give you a house full of silver and gold, let's kill him. We will kill him, if you agree. Terach, so Terach said, he said, I want to give you an analogy, what you're asking of me. This is comparable to a horse. Who they said to the horse, we're going to cut off your head. In exchange for cutting off your head, we will give you tons and tons of hay and barley that you can eat. So the horse said to them, Shaitim, you fools. If you cut off my head, how will I be able to eat the barley? What do I need this money for? If you kill my son, I'll have no one to inherit all of the money that you're going to give me. Hishalei Melech. The king responded and said, Midvarecha ani makir sheben nolad lecha. I can tell from your response that you indeed have had a kid. My chachamim, my wise men were correct. Or the Terach, so Terach said, Ben nolad li v'meis. He said, I have had a son, and the son has died. Amar loi, al chai ani amar lecha v'loi al meis. I'm not talking about the child that you had who died. I'm talking about the child who's alive. Ma asa Terach hechvi es v'noi b'ma'or shalishanim. Terach went and he hid his son in a cave for 3 years. God prepared for him miraculously 2 windows. From one side there was oil coming out, and from the other side there was flour. So he had all of his needs taken care of for 3 years. Listen to this amazing story about Avraham Avinu. When he was 3 years old, so he left the cave, and he thought inside of his heart. He didn't know anything. He was a child. He had grown up by himself inside of a cave. Who created the heavens and the earth and me? So he looked up. He had never been outside before, and he saw the sun, and he said, wow, that's an amazing power. So he prayed the entire day to the sun, thinking that it was the power that had created the world. In the evening, sun went down in the west, and the moon came up in the east. When he saw the moon, and he saw all around were all of these stars, so he said, this must be that which created the heavens and the earth and me. And the stars must be its servants. So the entire night he prayed to the moon. In the morning he saw the moon went down, the sun came back up. He saw these do not have the power. There must be someone who is greater than them, a master upon these. Only to him, only to the God who created them will I pray and bow down. He went to his father and he asked him, my father, who created the heavens and the earth and who created me? My idols have created the heavens and the earth and all of these. Avraham says, show me your idols. I want to see if they have the ability to create everything. So he brought his idols out and he showed him the idols. He turned to his mother and he said to her, he said, I want to bring, please make me some good foods. I want to bring them as a sacrifice for these idols. Maybe that they will receive my offering. He brought them as a sacrifice. He brought it in front of the biggest one of them. No sound, nothing, no response. Couldn't believe it. He went back to his mother. He thought maybe it wasn't good enough for them. So make me better ones. I brought it again in front of them. Not a noise, not a response. He had a divine inspiration, and he said, it's a verse in Tanakh. He spoke it out. Avraham Avinu himself. He said they have a mouth but they don't speak. They have eyes but they don't see. They have no power. He immediately took a fire and he burned them. He was serious. He took out the biggest of them all and he placed him outside and he put the fire in his hand, the torch in his hand. When his father came home and he saw that all of his idols were burned, he said to Abraham, Bini, lama saraftis lahai? Why have you done this, my son? Amar, he said, Lo sarafti elah hagadol shebehem. Kotzav aleim v'sarfam. He said, I didn't burn them. The biggest one of them, who was holding the torch, he's the one who burned them all. Amar, Bini shaita, he said to him, my son, you fool. What? These are made out of wood. What, they don't have the power to burn another one? Lo, ani asisim, I made them out of wood. So Avraham said, Listen to what you're saying. Listen to what your mouth is saying. Why they don't have any power? Why are you telling me that they were the ones who created the world? That doesn't make sense. What did he do? He went to Nimrod. Very interesting. At this point, Terach goes to tell on Avraham Avinu, on Abraham. He goes to Nimrod, who was the king at that time. And we'll see, not only was he a king, but he had made himself to be a god. He said he was a god. Okay, so what happens? He says, my son burned our idols. Shalach Nimrod b'shvil Avraham. So Nimrod calls for Abraham. Lama Sisakin. He says to him, why did you do this? Why have you done this? He said the same thing. I didn't do it. The big idol did it. So Nimrod said, they're not alive. They can't do that. He said to him the same thing. Listen to what you're saying. So what does Nimrod say? Sorry, I lost the place. So Avraham said, they don't have any power, so if they don't have any power, why are you bowing to them? And why are you not bowing to the one who actually created the world, which is God? Or Lech. He just said, why don't you bow to the one who's created the world? Nimrod said, I created the heavens and the earth with my power. He says to him, you can create? Yeah, you're the one who created? When I came out of the cave, so I saw that the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. If you can make the sun rise in the west and set in the east, you're the creator, I will bow down to you. I have no problem. If not, says Abraham to Nimrod, if you can't do that, so the one who gave me the power to burn up those idols will help me to kill you who make yourself into an idol. So Nimrod says to his wise men, what should we do with him? How can we get rid of this guy? Says the wise men of Nimrod, this is the guy. This is the one we spoke about, that we said that a nation is going to come from him who's going to inherit this world and the next world. And now you must give him measure for measure. He burned those idols, he must be burned. They immediately threw him into the furnace of fire. At that moment, Hashem had mercy upon him and saved him. God says, I am the one who saved you from Ur-Kasdim. So this is the introduction that God speaks about when it comes to creating a covenant with Abraham. He says, I am the one who took you out of Ur-Kasdim. I am the one who saved you from the fire. I am the one who took you out of that place where you were threatened. Now, what's interesting to me is that according to Rabbeinu Bachai, according to this Medrash, so this is the introduction to the creation of the Jewish people. God is saying, this is how I understand it, this is the depth of what's being said here. God is saying it was implanted. There was a moment in creation, during history, where you came into being. And when you came into being, the wise men saw it in the stars. This one star came from this side of the heavens and surrounded the whole reality, swallowed up the whole reality, took it over. And what is the idea behind that? What is the concept? The concept is that there's an Abraham who is a higher reality, who's a spiritual reality, who's a star that comes from somewhere else. The Jewish people are that star. We are that star. We come from a different reality. Now look at the contrast. And this is also the foundation, the introduction to the covenant. Look at the contrast between the kings of the world, the kings of Britain, the kings of France, the kings of Asia, the kings of Japan, the kings of every other nation, and Abraham, who is the king of the Jewish people, the first king, the first conqueror. Look at the difference. Nimrod, who represented the forces of evil, the forces of the Ummah Sa'olam, of the nations of the world, of the opposite of what the Jewish people represent. He is all about koichi v'oitzem yodi. I created this world. The idol is just a hechitimtza. It's when I pray to this idol, I get what I want. What I want. Right? That's the avodah zarah. That's the idolatry. The idolatry is ego. I created me. I am the self-made man. I have done everything myself. I, me, I, me. Okay? The me generation is not a new thing. The iPhone, the iTunes, all these I's, it's not new. It's old. It's as old as history. It's as old as humankind. But the difference is that the king, what's the job of a king? The king leads his generation. Nimrod led his generation in saying it's all about me, and I create myself, and I create my reality. Avraham Avinu is the opposite of that. He's the one who comes in from a different part of reality, a different space, a different place. And he says, there's something, it's not just me. He comes out of the cave, which is just him, right? It's only him inside of the cave. And notably, even there, he's living on miracles. He comes out of the cave, and he says, there's something greater than me. There's something beyond me that created everything here. It's not just me. Maybe it's the sun. Maybe it's the moon. No, it's not those. Maybe it's these idols. No, it's not those. Maybe it's Nimrod. No, it's not him. There's something greater. There's something beyond me. That's Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is the one who recognizes that there's a creator. There's something beyond him. And he draws the beyond him into the world. Avraham Avinu is the one who is focused on others. He's the Baal Chesed. There's something besides for me. It's not just about me. Nimrod is the one who all people exist just to serve him. That's all it's about, right? It's just about serving me. I am the king. I am the creator. Avraham Avinu is, no, it's not about me. It's about how can I serve you? How can I help you see that there's someone beyond you? How can I see beyond me? Right? That's Avraham Avinu. And that's the Jewish people. And that's the foundation of who we are. Why does Avraham Avinu need all this wealth? Why does Avraham Avinu need to be a conqueror, a great power? Hashem promises him, all that see you will be blessed. All who see will bless you. Those who bless you will be blessed. Those who curse you will be cursed. You will be famous. Everywhere he goes, people know who he is. Why does he need that for? Why is that important? Why do we need to see that he's a conqueror? Why do we need to see that he's so wealthy? And the answer is because these things are important. It is important to have power. But only insofar as Avraham Avinu is the one who will use that power to draw godliness into the world. God is going to manifest here in the wealth, in the conquering, and even within the conquering itself. When Avraham Avinu wins this war with his 318 men, with Aner and Eshkol and his generals and all the people who come with him, he wins the war, but it's not about him. He doesn't even want to keep the spoils of the war. Unheard of. Why did you go to war? To amass wealth, to conquer and to have servants and people to serve you. No, it's not about me. It's not. If anything, it's about bringing these people under the Confrontation Shechina, under the wings of the divine presence. It's not about me. That is the difference between all the kings of England, all of those portraits. They lived, they had power, and they died. All those people. And perhaps they were good kings and queens, perhaps they were not so good. But what did they leave over behind them? A portrait. What is the portrait that we have of Avraham Avinu? The portrait that we have is of someone who looked outside of himself, searched for God. He was someone who, from his very inception, was someone who, it was all about coming from another place, a spiritual realm, and spreading that throughout the four corners of the earth, spreading that throughout the four corners of the land, this world and the next. He inherits this world and the next, because the next world is only inheritable by those who realize that there is a next world, that there is a spiritual reality, and try to draw that reality into our reality. That's who Avram was. That's the portrait that we get. His focus was outside of himself. His focus was, how can I expand and see beyond me, beyond who I am? And recognize that I am not the one who creates my reality. I am not the one who it's all about, that everyone has to bow down to me and serve me. But rather, it's all about a greater power, a power called God. a power called Hashem, who I want to reveal in the world, and I want to bring about. And Nimrod and his Chacham and those wise men knew about that. They understood that he represented an existential threat to their powerful egos. Unbelievable. It's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about I, says Avraham Avinu. It's about something higher. And that's the power. That's the kingship. That's the kingdom of the people of Israel. And that's who we are. And that's what we represent in the world. And it's not about us. We are not many in number. We are not mighty and powerful, although we are also mighty and powerful. And we are also conquerors, and we also have wealth. The Jewish people have returned to the land of Israel, and we do have a modicum of power. We do have a modicum of wealth. And we've always had some power and sway throughout history. But it's not about us. It's not just about us having power or sway. We know how to give to others. That is the reason we have the power, so that we can be influential in our spiritual quest, in bringing down the spirituality, the godliness into the world. So I want to bless you, and I ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to realize what is our mission, what is the goal in life. How can we emulate an Abraham? We read these stories every year. We have to understand our history. We need to understand 3,000 years ago, 3,700 years ago, what went on. We need to know the foundation of who we are. What is our mission? Hashem should help us to recognize that and to remember what it's all about. That it's not about me, it's not about my power, it's not about everyone bowing down to me. Hashem should help us to recognize that it's about you, it's about Him, and it's about bringing that spiritual recognition to the entire world. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.